And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the Top Dog Talk podcast. I'm your host, Harrison Reno. I'm your host, Harrison Reno. Moving to today, co-host Dan Kiley. Sorry about that. I was looking at my audio settings and they said MacBook speakers. I'm like, no, we're not doing that. So with that being said, welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to episode 57. Dan, I like your King Kirby shirt. Can we get a full view of that real quick?
Sure, absolutely.
Woo! Hell yeah. Dan, how is it going Tuesday evening?
So hold on. I have to give a shout out. This is courtesy of, well, not courtesy, I paid for it, but because the DGD podcast does such a great job of supporting us, I decided to support them. He has his own merch shop, and I thought this shirt was pretty swagged out, so I got it. Appreciate you, Robert, at the DGD podcast. He's got merch.
Hell yeah, and I'm sure we'll see him in the comments today because he is a frequent guest here. Zachary Moss says, hey guys, sorry about missing 4 wide last night. Zach, as Jonathan Williams, our co-host, says, we only allow one excuse absence around here, Zach. Don't let it happen again. So with that being said, Dan, how's it going Tuesday evening for you?
You know what? Today was a awesome day. Showed up to work today, and they're like, oh, by the way, we have this work function. I was like, oh, I only have to work like 2 hours today. That's awesome. So I am in a great mood.
A great mood. I saw you were eating some food. What kind of food did you get served today?
I think they had like Brazilian, all the meats from a Brazilian steakhouse. One of the guys that we work with, he's Brazilian, and he grilled all that stuff up. And then we had this amazing desserts from the Marietta Diner. Listen, I'm so fat already, and now I just can't even. Like my wife was like, I made dinner. I'm like, I'm not eating for 2 days.
and like I said, if you don't want to check out some of that Brazilian cuisine that Dan had, look at the scrolling bar below at Dan Kiley3. Go follow him on Twitter. Make sure you go subscribe to the podcast. Ooh, wrong one. Subscribe. Make sure to like and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube for more Top Dog Talk. Subscribe to us on the podcast, wherever you get your podcasting platform. Rate us 5 stars. Leave us a comment and review, whether you like us, whether you hate us. You know, if you're a Texas A&M hater, you want to laugh at Texas A&M, that's great. Go leave it in the reviews. Dan, we have hot topics to hit, and without further ado, we are 3 minutes in, and I've rambled on for almost 2.5 of this. Let's get right into the hot topics. We got 2 good ones today. Dan, first off, should all networks, TV networks that is, work together to stagger start times for college football so that you can watch, for the viewer, the endings of multiple games like the NCAA does with basketball? Dan, what do you say?
So, one of the things that I've noticed over time is that the networks originally were very competitive and they were very territorial, and they didn't share any properties. But now that's kind of gone away, and you see a lot of cross-pollination, and you see people advertising other shows for other networks. Heck, you'll see guys on ESPN be like, well, this game's going to be on Fox tonight at 5 o'clock or whatever, so they have gone away from being really selfish, right? I think the next logical step, and they do it so beautifully for college basketball, is that they stagger the starts of these games where, you can watch the game that you want to, but then as your game wraps up and is over, you can flip over to the other channel and you can catch the end of the other games. For the most part, the NFL does a really good job of that with its early window, its late window, and then its final window where, a lot of times, like, you'll have your game start at 1 o'clock and then you'll have one at 1:05. Like, you don't realize that they're staggered because they don't tell you. They just tell you the game's going to start at 1, but it actually starts a couple of minutes later. So the NFL does kind of do it. But I think it's natural, and I think they should do it. And when a product is successful, it's successful everywhere, right? I mean, obviously, the AFC for the most part is on CBS. The NFC for the most part is on Fox. And then you have your game of the week. But you want a great product. And if the people are watching the product, they're going to come to your channel to watch it eventually, right? So I think it makes a lot of sense for them to do it. I think they could do it in college football. Yeah, but like all of the games start at noon or all the games start at 3:30. Like, there's so many good games now where we want to watch them all. I think it needs to be done. That's just my opinion.
I like the idea as I'm over here trying to share the link to the Discord for all the Discord members. Sorry about that, Dan. And sorry about that to the audience because I know eye contact is essential. But yeah, I agree with Dan here. I would like to see a little bit more staggering of the game times. I would love to be able to sit here and watch Texas, Alabama right towards the end and then be able to switch over, right as that game's ending into the start of Arkansas, South Carolina. That was one game we didn't really get to watch for the most part if you were all tied into the Texas game, because obviously Texas and Alabama were having some amazing football being played there. But yeah, I agree with Dan. Definitely stagger it out. If you want the ratings and the reviews, like all these college football expansion crowds, they always talk about the ratings and reviews. Well, what better way to increase the ratings and reviews than by staggering the game times? Like all these people who are non-TV executives point out that the ratings are low. So yeah, I'm with Dan on this one. Definitely have to. I would like to see more staggering of the game times and really make the slate, the Saturday slate, just as elite as the pro game. Because you go back, I mean, this Sunday, Dan, as I was sitting here doing work, it was great to sit down here and say, okay, I can watch this game here, turn on Red Zone on another screen, and just have a full day. And then you hit that right after those 4:30 games are played, the 4:25 games, you get back an hour between like 7 to 8:25 before the prime times game is played. So you have that little break put in there, and that's what makes it elite.
Sidebar, Red Zone is elite. And I have been hooked on Red Zone since the day it came out. I remember I had to pay extra for that service. And my wife was like, I cannot believe it. I'm like, this is the greatest thing ever created. I have ADHD. That is football on ADHD. That is the greatest thing ever invented. They need to have a college. I don't know how they can work it out, but they need to have a college Red Zone, 100%. But anyway, second hot topic. Harrison, I'll let you go first. What has been the best sports day and or weekend of your entire life?
Best sports day and or weekend, I would say probably, this is tough. I think the best day was definitely watching Georgia win it all. I think that day as a whole was just elite in any sense of the word. Not really from a fan, but I mean from like go on Twitter that day, Dan. That whole day was just filled of excitement, hype, and everything. I remember that day vividly. And you get down to about midnight, and really right after that Kiley Ringo pick, excitement spills onto Twitter. I've never seen the Georgia fan base all in as united as they were after that pick was made, after that whole game was played. I mean, really, I should say probably the day after, because there's just excitement in the air. There's no more 1980, no more all this slander. All the narratives are dead. That was the most beautiful day on my timeline I've ever seen. The most beautiful day, January 11th. I'll never forget it. It was such an easy day, such a smooth sailing day for us in the media.
Well, the reason I came up with this question is because I was reminded, thanks to my memories on my Facebook or whatever, the weekend that I went to Notre Dame to see the Dogs play. That was the probably, outside of obviously relationship stuff like my wife and my children, that has got to be the best weekend of my life, period. So it was amazing. I had an opportunity to go with a childhood friend of mine that I grew up in the neighborhood with, and we went up there. So one of my buddies played hockey for Notre Dame. He gave me the football tickets for free. One of his buddies, one of our collective buddies, a guy named Matt Bryant, used to kick for the Falcons, gave us Falcons tickets for free. I called one of my umpire buddies. He gave me tickets to the Cubs and Brewers for free. So we went and saw Cubs Brewers. Then we went and saw Georgia Notre Dame. And then we went and saw the Falcons Bears. That was probably one of the greatest weekends of my entire life. We got to do it all. We went to the Cubby Bar. We went to Churchill Downs on the way up, which was absolutely amazing. That if you've never been to Churchill Downs, oh my gosh, that place is breathtaking. Then we did the campus tour. I've been to Notre Dame multiple times in my life, but the way that Notre Dame opened up their campus that weekend, they opened up all of their venues. You got to go into their hockey arena. You got to go into their basketball gym and watch the basketball practice. You got to go in to their baseball field. They opened everything up. They had never done that before. Any other time I've been in Notre Dame, they hadn't done that. They had the cathedral open. You could do whatever you wanted. The people were so nice. And then, you go over to Soldier Field where my grandfather played. And, it was really special. I got to go into Notre Dame, and on the circle, they have all the players who've ever played at Notre Dame. I got to see my grandpa's name up there. It was just such an unbelievable weekend. And I know that most people would say Georgia won a national championship, but anybody who got a chance to make that weekend and do it, it was completely unbelievable. And this is just an excuse for me to say it again because it was just amazing.
That sounds absolutely amazing. I do want to get up to that Chicago. Go to. I know this is kind of a different topic, but I do want to go to Chicago, go to Wrigley Field, and then go to Soldier Field. see a Bears game, something like that. Obviously, probably not going to go watch the Cowboys play the Bears because the Cowboys are hopeless at this point, as we covered yesterday on the 4 Wide podcast. Remember, number 4 Wide podcast, as in it's a little analogy towards that, the 4 Wide formation football for those of you that may wonder why we made that the name of the podcast. But with that being said, Dan, it is time for your rant of the week. You brought up a really good point yesterday on last night's podcast, the 4 Wide podcast, which we have big news coming on the future of the 4 Wide podcast. Stay tuned to Twitter, all 4 of us, at Dan Kiley3, at Dr_Jwool, and at The Stodfather on Twitter. I will put that up here on the banner. Dan, take it away. What is your rant of the week about?
So last night at 4 Wide, if you had an opportunity to watch, we talked about, has the transfer portal and immediate eligibility actually done the impossible and created parity in college football? We had a great discussion on that. I won't rehash that. If you want to hear it, please go watch that podcast. I think it was a really well done segment by all of us. But I'm going to kind of extend that conversation to this rant, which is, what teams have been doing a really good job with the changes in the portal and which teams have not? So I think you could say that there have been a couple teams that have been doing a good job. I think Texas A&M is taking advantage of the NIL stuff. Tennessee, a little bit of that. Miami definitely has done that. That's NIL. But transfer portal, if you think about teams like, Alabama lost a lot of guys, graduation, and just turning guys over. Maybe they even missed a little bit on some recruits. But Alabama reloaded in the transfer portal this year. They get Jahmyr Gibbs. They get Burton. They get Burton. Oh, why can't I say his name? Jermaine Burton. And
there we go.
And a couple other guys as well. So they're able to plug those holes, and they are instant contenders. They probably should have looked for some offensive linemen. But the other team, USC, and I know it's become almost comical because Jeremiah is dying on that hill right now, where he just does not want to give them credit. But look what they were able to do. And there's still plenty of the season to be played, and we could all look foolish in the end. But as of right now, they go out and they get a coach, right? They get Lincoln Riley, but they're bringing his quarterback with them, and Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams, arguably one of the top 2 or 3 quarterbacks in the entire country. I think Caleb Williams is better than anybody else in college football right now. That's my opinion. But then you go get Jordan Addison, who's last year's Biletnikoff winner, the number 1 wide receiver in the country out of Pittsburgh. And I was completely unaware that the running back that they got was from Oregon, but they go out and get the Oregon running back who rushed for over 1,000 yards last year. Then they, I believe they said there was like 7 transfers that are starting. So I don't know the rest of them off the top of my head, but they went out and got elite talent, Harrison, when this elite talent is allowing them to take a team that had a losing record last year, and now they are arguably one of the top 10 teams in the country. I would venture to say I'm not going to venture. I'm just going to say they are a top 10 team. They might even be a top 5 team. So that's who I think is doing it really, really well right now is USC and a team like Alabama. Georgia used it to their advantage last year. They got Darian Kendrick. Obviously, they got more guys than that, but Darian Kendrick is the one that sticks out because he's the one that made such a big impact for us here at the University of Georgia. And I'm sure there are other teams that are doing well, but there's also one team that stands out that is doing a very poor job with the transfer portal. It's because they will not graduate to the next level of football, and that's Dabo Swinney in the University of Clemson, who does not allow transfers. So, everybody keeps saying that Clemson's back and they're going to be, one of these top teams. I don't see that, and I think Dabo has got to get over himself. He has planted his flag right now, and he refuses to admit when he's wrong. The one thing that I will give Kirby Smart a lot of credit for, and the one thing that I always pointed to is he was so damn stubborn. Kirby was so damn stubborn, but without saying he was wrong, he's admitted in some instances that he was wrong and kind of softened his stance or changed his philosophy, and it propelled him to the next level. Until Dabo does that, he is the one that's doing the portal wrong. And this is part of the game. It's going to be here. Nick Saban is always, and Brooks is great about pointing this out too, is Nick Saban will go out and he'll have a rant on something that he wants to change, and then it will eventually change. He ranted against the portal, but he wasn't successful. So what did he do? He realized he had to embrace it or he would die. And he has. Dabo has yet to do that. And I think until he does, I think they're going to be on the back burner. What do you have an opinion on this?
I think definitely Dabo's probably neglecting an instrumental part of building your roster these days. As Lincoln Riley's showing right now at USC, you can build your roster off of the transfer portal and kind of not really as take the full 25 or 30 recruits from high school. You can go to the transfer portal and get immediate success from there. It's all about whether or not they fit your scheme, fit your team, and fit your culture, which I think is an interesting question for Dabo Swinney, because I think at the end of the day, I think he's doing it because of culture fits. I really think he believes that if he goes to take a guy from the portal, that it's going to mess up the culture of his team, and that's not the culture of his program. And I respect that. But at the end of the day, aren't we in here for winning championships? Isn't that what college football is about? The best want to win a championship, and I think he's neglecting a really important aspect of how to win a championship. Yes, you can go take all these 4- and 5-star recruits from the high school ranks. As Shane Beamer said, Georgia has 100 5-stars in their roster, like he said last year after playing Georgia. But you can't rely on freshmen to win a national championship. Georgia only has maybe 1 or 2 freshmen a year that break out and become the impact player from the first day they step on the field in Athens. Brock Bowers was that last year. There was no other freshman that stood out as much as he did last year for Georgia. This year, Georgia may have 2. Georgia may have Mykel Williams, the 5-star talented defensive end. Well, actually, they probably have, they definitely have 2 right now, it seems like. Mykel Williams, talented defensive end, got his first sack just this past weekend against Samford. You have Malachi Starks, the safety. Dan was talking about him over the offseason, someone he sees playing a big role this year. He's already playing a big role in Georgia's defense. Nobody's taken more snaps on defense than Malachi Starks has so far this fall. So it's not very often that you get freshmen to come in here and play lights out. And I think that's something Texas A&M fans and people around that have been watching Texas A&M are learning very quickly. You cannot depend on freshmen to take you from an 8-4 team to being a 10-11 championship contending team. It's going to take you 3 or 4 years, as Kirby Smart showed. That's my take on all of this. With that being said, Dan, do you have anything to add before we transition?
Well, the only thing I would add to that is you're right in regard to if you have a really loaded football team, a freshman can come in and contribute because he's supported by all that talent around him. It's very difficult as a freshman to come in and completely be the leader on the team when you don't have that necessarily all that talent around you. So Georgia, Alabama, those cases are very rare where you have a super talented freshman, but he's supported by everybody else around him. So those transfer portal teams, they need the veterans to come in to support the younger players. So, all right, go ahead and transition, my guy.
We got thoughts and reactions to Samford, and it's actually something me and Dan were talking about privately, just about Georgia's football, about the game in general. Obviously, it was a 33-0 win over Samford, a game where Georgia rarely does this happen. Georgia did not cover the spread. It was a 52-point. They were a 52-point favorite according to the Win Casino, and actually, I don't even know if it's fair to say that they didn't cover the spread because the Win Casino was the only sports book that I know of that put out a line for this game. But, the fact is, Georgia's offense only put up 33 points against Samford and has many debating whether or not it was an off day defensively or Kirby Smart was intentionally not trying to run up the score on Samford and head coach Chris Haster, the guy who actually gave Kirby Smart his first on-field coaching job back at Valdosta State in 2000. Dan, you said you were listening to Buck Blue the other day, and he brought up, he said, or I believe verbatim, stated that he thought he knew that Georgia was not trying to run up the score, or brought up the fact that Georgia was not trying to run up the score on Chris Hatcher because you go back to the 2 times, the prior time that they played them, they haven't done it. So, Dan, I'm curious for your thoughts. I mean, Georgia's offense was not very efficient, and you had 4 opportunities in the red zone that ended with you having to kick a field goal. Another opportunity, a 5th opportunity, where Bennett took a bad sack on 3rd and long, which knocked you 17 yards, forced Jack Podlesny into a 50-plus yard field goal attempt, which fell just short, and Georgia ended the drive with no points. So, Dan, I want your thoughts. I mean, was it an off day?
Yeah, it's a mixed bag for me. Like you said, Buck Belue was adamant that everybody knew that he wasn't going to run up the score. We do know that Buck is connected to the program. We do know that Buck has Kirby's ear. He could talk to him. He has a relationship with him. So for him to say that, I think there's a lot of truth to that. I don't think Kirby was going out there trying to absolutely put it on them. But, one of the things that in our Four Wide podcast before the Oregon game, I was making it a point that I didn't think Kirby would try to run up the score on Dan Lanning. And I think it was Jeremiah that said something along the lines of, he may not be trying to, but he may not be able to avoid it, right? So if you look at the way that Georgia played, they scored 30 points in the first half. They were relatively aggressive. In the second half, it's not like they weren't trying to score. They missed a lot of plays, but they weren't necessarily taking home run shots. And they have such a talent advantage that you would have thought at some point that they were going to be taking shots or whatever. And if they would have went deep every play, they were going to hit on at least one or two, right? But I think the part that doesn't lead me to believe that it was intentional was, I believe they wanted to play a lot of young guys. And they didn't necessarily get to do that because the score never got elevated. So I think it was just an off day. I think they were so hyped up playing against Oregon that, you almost expect them to have some level of letdown, right? But the defense came out, played. They didn't allow any points. I think it was funny. Joe Klatt, who I shared that thing with you last night, he's got Georgia rated number 1. He said something about Georgia's going to outscore their opponents this year 1,000,000 to nothing. He's like, oh wait, they gave up a field goal already. He's like, but that's all they're going to give up. He's like, they might go to the SEC championship game only allowing one more field goal the whole year. So Joel Klatt, add him to the list of people who's fired up about this Georgia football team. But I think it's mixed. I don't think they were as aggressive as they could have been or wanted to be. At the same time, I just think they were a little bit sloppy and were underwhelming in many areas of the game, which prevented guys like Brock Vandagriff from getting in the game and playing. Carson Beck did get in the game, but he only got 2 series, right? One or 2 series. It wasn't a lot. And then they shortened the game in the fourth quarter. I don't know if anybody caught that. I didn't catch it initially, but they, oh my gosh, I just went blank. Yeah, they shortened the fourth quarter to 12 minutes.
Yeah. And really, I lean more towards the side of that it was an off day. I mean, obviously, you look at the first couple drives there. Bennett missed a couple downfield shots, a couple shots at the end zone with, Darnell Washington overshot Darnell Washington just a slight bit. Although when you go back and watch it on the All-22 tape, he was trying to fit the ball in over safety's head as Washington was coming in on Diggs. So I don't know if it was a slight overthrow or if it was just the timing was off. I don't know what it is with that, but it was a miss nonetheless. And then you also had the 2 touchdown shots to Bowers and 1 to McConkey that were kind of overthrown and out of the reach. Those guys couldn't come on, couldn't corral them in. So that leads me to believe it was an off day. And obviously Kirby Smart said post game Monday, he said that they didn't win their one-on-ones on the outside, talking about the receivers and all that, and that's a point of improvement for them. And Brooks brought up an interesting point, something we'll get into, as the season progresses. Samford basically put out the game plan similar to what Mississippi State did back in 2020. They were running the 3-2-6 stand, 3 down linemen, 6 defensive backs on the field. It was a good test for Georgia and how, Mississippi State's going to play them. So it's going to be interesting to see. The last time you played Mississippi State, close game, JT Daniels had, a hell of a debut as a starter at Georgia. Are they going to play the Mississippi State Bulldogs close again? Can that formula still work? Is Georgia going to go out and execute? Very, very interesting, day. Very interesting game, but hopefully I think Georgia bounces back. Bennett finished 24 of 34, 300 yards and 1 touchdown. And once again, Kenny McIntosh was your leading receiver with, let me check my note. Sorry, I lost it. 5 receptions for 61 yards. Dan, he is still, right now, he is the number 1 explosive outlet for that Georgia offense.
Who is?
Kenny McIntosh.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, 100%. And that was the guy that I was riding that bandwagon all summer long is, everybody's on the Kendall Milton train, and this is in no way, shape, or form slander or an indictment of Kendall Milton. I love Kendall Milton. I just felt like what Kenny McIntosh offers, the Georgia could use tremendously. So I was a big fan of Kenny McIntosh, and I was hoping that he would get utilized the way that he is early this season. But hey, listen, you brought up something that I wanted to ask you, and I totally forgot to send it in the notes, but you just brought it up. So Chris Hatcher comes out and runs a specific defense that they may play against Mississippi State. Do you think the relationship that he has with Hatcher, where he asked them to do that, saying, hey, listen, do you mind doing something along these lines so we can get some work against it in the game? And, I'll take care of you. I mean, it's a very real possibility. I'm not saying it happened, but I'm asking you, is that a possibility?
To me, it seems unrealistic. Now, you never know with the relationship these two guys have. I don't think that Kirby would ask the opposing coach, no matter who it is, to run a specific scheme against them, because then you open up a can of worms of, hey, well, we're just going to practice against this the whole time. I really think you got to give credit to Samford that they put together a game plan that in some shape or form worked. You covered the field with 6 DBs, and Georgia didn't win their one-on-ones, like Kirby Smart said. You got to give credit where credit is due. I don't think he would ask him to do that. Now, it's not out of the realm of possibility. I guess it is, because but to me, it seems like that would just be submitting yourself to defeat, a very, very, very certain defeat if you're Samford. But I'm not going to put out of the realm of possibility. Maybe it happened. We'll never find out. But it is going to be interesting to figure out, how Georgia executes next time they face it, because that is the basis of how Mississippi State plays defense these days.
Yeah, it was just something that popped in my head whenever it kept getting brought up that they're going to face that later in the season, and it's ironic because they don't typically run that type of defense. So I just thought maybe with that relationship, it was a factor. But it's just a conspiracy theory, my little tinfoil on my head right here. But listen, I don't think we can take a whole lot out of that game regardless, right? I think there was a lot of guys that got opportunities to play, maybe not as many as we wanted. But at the end of the day, everybody's healthy, right? Everybody's healthy, and we move on to the next game. We got to win. Don't give up any points. So I am ultimately happy in that regard that everybody got out of there alive. We have no significant injuries, and that leads us into this week's game, which is a real game. It's a conference game. And before anybody gets sidetracked and says, oh, or not sidetracked, but sideways and says, oh, it's just South Carolina. I don't want to have to remind you, but I will remind you. South Carolina is that one team through the years that has beaten Georgia when they have zero reason to do so. I remember one of my first games as a student at the University of Georgia with my wife. We went to South Carolina game, and they lost at home. And oh, man, that was a rough night in the bars in Athens. I'm just going to tell you, I don't specifically remember a lot of that night, but a couple of years ago, I was getting ready to go on the field for my son's game, and they're like, "Oh, Bennett just missed a field goal, and we just lost to South Carolina." And I'm like, "What? So South Carolina is that team? They have bitten our ass from time to time. So do not take this game lightly. If you're a fan, show up, be loud, let's go."
Absolutely. And with that being said, 2019 loss to South Carolina is the reason why every time Georgia plays South Carolina, unless it's played at night, everyone's going to say, oh, this is a trap game for Georgia. This is a trap game for Georgia. They got to watch out. The place to see a big reason. And now, everyone's talking about Georgia has the number 1 ranking, and it's even more of a reason why Georgia is heading into a trap game. And I don't think it is a trap game, Dan. You're coming off of a sloppy offensive performance against Slamper, at least in Archer, what we believe to be a sloppy off day. I think there is still a lot to prove for this Georgia offense. They had a great opening game against Oregon, put up 49 points, and really started off the Heisman campaign for Stetson Bennett. I still think there's a lot to prove, not to mention you still got a young defense, very young, inexperienced defense, just 2 games under their belt. They have a lot to prove as well. Dan, they only have 1 sack on the year. That 1 sack came against Samford. It was Michael Williams. Georgia is tied for last in the nation in sacks.
But that's fine, because I think it all plays into what they've been doing so far schematically. They had a specific attack for the Oregon game. I don't believe, like I said, they were not out for blood against Samford. So you can basically throw that game. That game didn't exist. The only game that really exists is the Oregon game. That's the only game that matters at this point. That's when we got to see Georgia play for real. I think in those games, Kirby, a lot of times, not just Kirby, we always say Kirby, but the entire coaching staff. I think the entire coaching staff, they play with things. They try new things. They put little wrinkles in. They try to do different things, try to see who can respond to what. So I think games like Samford don't really matter because I don't necessarily think the game plan is to go out there and dominate. I really don't believe that. So with a game like South Carolina, the game is to go out there and dominate. They are scheming for South Carolina. They are putting in place for South Carolina. They are going to try to play their very best against South Carolina. It's not experiment time against South Carolina. They're going to get pressure on the quarterback. Whether they get the sack or not, that's irrelevant to me. If a quarterback is running for his life and he's throwing off platform, we have a better chance of being successful in the back end of that. I believe our guys can cover. So I'm not worried about getting the quarterback on the ground every play. I do want him pressured. I do want him moved off his spot. And I do not want to see him running all over the damn field. Spencer Rattler is a hell of a quarterback, okay? And we have to prepare for him that way. Is he an arrogant little jerk? Yeah, he is that. But he's a hell of a football player, and he can get hot, and he can sling that ball around. So you have to respect him, and you have to respect that team. And like I said, that game when Georgia went up there, it was an ESPN game, a night game. I have not seen a college environment like that in a long time. That is the equivalent of when the Falcons went to New Orleans Saints after Hurricane Katrina. Man, that environment was incredible, and they just beat our tails that night. So, I know that is a hostile place to play. I know that they're going to be fired up to play. I know they're going to rally behind Rattler, and he's going to have a chance to be good.
Absolutely, and I think, they pointed out all the time when you go back and watch Rattler, even in his days at Oklahoma, the talent is there. And this is not going to be the best talent group that he's played with. He obviously played with much more talented teams at Oklahoma. He's had some struggles with the offensive line so far at South Carolina, which is something maybe he was expecting it. I don't know I don't know what his expectations were, but he's already been sacked 9 times. 9 times in 2 games. Arkansas sacked him 6 times. Georgia State got to him 3 times. And when you look at his numbers aren't too hot either. I know it's kind of been up and down. When you don't have the most consistent of offensive line play, you also don't get the most consistent product out of your quarterback because, when he is trying to throw the ball and he's actually not under pressure, then there is a tendency of, I don't know if it's shock or if it's, you're still kind of hoping that you don't get hit, right as you're about to throw this ball. But he has 603 yards. He's throwing for 603 yards already, completing at a 61.8 clip with 2 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. It's really going to be interesting. He has great arm strength. He has arm talent. He can get out. He's mobile. I'm really interested to see, what he can do against the Georgia offense. Kirby Smart has alluded to on today and last night on Monday during his press conference that he has South Carolina has gave Georgia trouble last year with some fast, some speed at receiver. So it's going to be interesting to see, how does Georgia's secondary cover these guys again? Because there were a few instances off the top of my head where South Carolina did get behind the Georgia defense and got some big plays off of them. So, and obviously I think this secondary is a lot better than the one Georgia had last year, mainly because you have a freshman, Malachi Starks, adding in at safety. That there's 3 really good safeties on Georgia's roster. Kiley Ringo and Kamari Lassiter both locking it down on the outside at corner. Dan, I'm really interested to see, last year, A.D. Mitchell was the breakout player as a freshman. Dylan Bell just scored his first collegiate touchdown as a receiver last year against Samford. It's going to be interesting. I mean, I see a possibility, A.D. Mitchell's his status is up in the air. Kirby Smart said today that he's hopeful A.D. Mitchell can play. If A.D. Mitchell does not play, I think it's possible Dylan Bell maybe has another breakout game.
If A.D. Mitchell cannot play, the A.D. Bell needs to have a big game. And we also need to see Don Blaylock. We need to see him come back and start to contribute. Eric Gilbert is another guy who I want to see get worked in more and more. And listen, I know that guy's been working incredibly hard. I know Kirby is a very difficult coach to please. and you have to do everything right to get on the field for Kirby. I believe he's working hard, and I believe once he's at the level of the ability to help contribute, he will. And I think he's going to be a special weapon. We don't need him right now necessarily, but I want to see Eric Gilbert start getting worked in. Oscar Delp is another guy who's a young guy who has had a couple nice little plays here and there. Brock Bowers hasn't gone off yet. Ladd McConkey has been the guy, in Kenny McIntosh have been the guys that have been getting most of the workload. Brock Bowers is just sitting there waiting, going, hey, I'm available whenever you guys need me. Offensively, we have a lot of different weapons. But, yeah, like you said, I think Bell is going to have to flash a little bit. Kearis Jackson, step up, expand his role a little bit. I think we'll be fine on offense. On defense, Michael Williams is one of the guys that everybody was super high on, and I didn't know a whole lot about. I mean, I knew what I read, but I'd never seen him play. So I was excited to see Michael Williams once he stepped in, and he has been really, really good so far this year for the Bulldogs. I'm excited to watch him. So he's one of the guys that needs to have a really nice game. And oh gosh, JDJ was another one of the guys that I really was looking forward to seeing play. He's been pretty good so far. And the guy that what's the guy that Jeremiah and Jonathan love so much? Oh gosh,
Monded?
not J. No, I
Monded?
can't remember. No, it's not him. Bobby Beal. They're killing Bobby Beal. They want him to just absolutely dominate. It would be nice to see him. I think our secondary is really, really solid, and any one of those guys, Malachi Starks, I don't think he's a flash player anymore. I think he's just part of your secondary now. So there's a lot of guys that I think need to have a good weekend, and I believe they will.
Yeah, I want to see the passing game bounce back. Definitely want to see that. You want to air it out, like Dan said. It's really kind of been, I wouldn't say surprising, but it is kind of surprising in the least to say that, Georgia has not had to rely solely on Brock Bowers when they need a big play. They have spread it out. They've used almost the full depth of their roster, but there are some guys that you would like to see get some more touches, get some more chances as the year goes on. I'm really excited to see, what this offense looks like at the end of the year, because right now, the status of A.D. Mitchell's up in the air. I don't think this is a long-term injury, but once you get everyone back fully, Aaron Smith has still yet to come back. Kirby Smart did provide a update on him that he is starting the process of getting back into football after his injury over fall camp. I can't wait to see what this offense looks like come the end of the year. But like Dan said, let's get the title. Let's see what Brock Bowers does. He is waiting there. You also got Darnell Washington in that room that's going to make a big play. And as we've already said, let's be patient with Eric Gilbert. He is still working back, still trying to get in football shape. And when he's ready, and when Georgia's ready, there's no doubting the talent that he has. But with that being said, Dan, I want your score prediction for this game. Number 1, Georgia at unranked South Carolina. Dan, what say you?
Well, I've been in the ballpark with some of these Georgia scores. I think we didn't give a prediction last week because it was just kind of pointless to do so. But we kind of all believed that Georgia would cover, and we were kind of all taken aback by that. What is the line in this game?
24.5 points, I believe.
So Georgia has the ability to cover that. I don't know. Hopefully it's good weather. But I see that game like 42-6, something like that. I think it could very well be that. But Spencer Rattler is really talented. So if I were to say he were to pop off 2 touchdowns, I mean, that's not like ridiculous. But this Georgia defense is proving people wrong. And I think there's a real attitude in that defensive room that they want to prove to people that they are every bit as good as the guys that have left. So that's why I'm going to say they hold them to 2 field goals, which is probably stupid. They're probably going to score a touchdown, but I'm going to say 42-6.
I'm going to go along the same line a little bit here. I think it's going to be around 45 to about 14. I think South Carolina finds the end zone, going to break that touchdown streak, sadly. But I do think it's going to come in garbage time. Also, I'm really interested to see what strategy, what game plan South Carolina comes out with. They don't have the offensive line, like many people are saying. Spencer Rattler's been sacked time and time again, 9 times already through 2 games. I think Georgia's going to go after him. But, great way to negate the defensive pressure, negate the offensive line, your offensive line, which may be lacking, is getting the ball out quick. Screen game. quick game passing, RPO, get that ball out, similar to what Oregon did. I'm interested to see if South Carolina will take a similar approach Saturday. If they do, then, you're going to have to be ready, be prepared that you're not going to sack them like 20 times this game. But with that being said, I have Georgia 45, South Carolina 14. Very similar score to what it was last year. Guys, that is going to wrap it up for today's show. Make sure to subscribe to the Top Dog Talk podcast wherever you get your podcast. Make sure to rate us 5 stars. And follow Dan on Twitter at DanKiley3. Follow me at Harrison Reno on Twitter. Guys, as Robert says from the DGD podcast, blow your ball to the moon. Make sure to tune in to the Classic City Sports podcast tomorrow night, 8 o'clock. You can catch them there. You can catch us Monday at, well, actually, I won't say that. Wait, stay tuned to Twitter. We got a big announcement coming on that one on the 4Y podcast. Dan, anything to say before we wrap it up?
No, thank you guys for joining us. Please support all of our activities. We love you guys. And if there's any way we can support you, let you know. And keep content coming in. Let us know if there's something you want to hear. If there's something that we're not doing, let us know. How could we make the show better? We love some feedback.
Absolutely. That's going to wrap it up for episode 57 of the Top Dog Talk podcast. We will see you next week for episode 58. Same place, same time.